The human mind processes information in a very specific way. And a lot of us have certain communication styles that we've been using our entire life. And when we start to create marketing or coaching programs or ads or emails or any other sort of communication, we take our information, our knowledge, and our skills, and we communicate it through the style of communication we've had our entire life. And that doesn't always align with how people process information, which means your audience either doesn't see why they need the information, it is not relevant to them, they don't think they can do it, they don't see how it's useful to them, even though you're sitting there screaming, I can help you, I know I can help you, I'm giving you gold, and they don't see it. When that happens, it leads to you creating really good content that you think is really good, but doesn't really land. You start to create webinars that you know is filled with great information, but doesn't bring the sales. And quite simply, a very simple fix is just understanding the 4-step process, the 4 psychological elements that people use in order to process information. And then reconstructing your knowledge, your skills, your information in that order can make massive difference in your open rates, click-through rates, cost per leads, sales conversion rates, and everything. And today's guest is going to walk you through what those 4 things are so that you can be more intentional and mindful in using them in the future and even help the communication with your spouse, kids, and more. You guys know I love this stuff. I teach this stuff, and I learned a lot from this episode. So if that sounds interesting to you, well, get ready. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. We have a killer episode for you guys here today. I kind of already know what we're going to talk about because I intentionally planned this episode out, because today's guest we had come talk to our NGM and NGM Plus students during one of our events. And I will be honest, I think we got the most amount of comments, praise, like, thank you so much for bringing this person to us, than we did, compared to other speakers in the past and events. Like, it was like, everyone's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so I wanted to bring today's guest onto the episode to bring it to all of you, our listeners who may not be customers yet. What are you guys doing? Come on. We wanted to have Andrea on the podcast, who Andrea is actually a coach for us as well. So she's our highest level coach. She's also, I believe, the very first student of our program. It was Video 4X back then. It is NGM now. Today, she's been in my ecosystem for a while and has become a really good friend, amazing coach, and just an all-around great person. But she has been diving really into a lot of different healing modalities and a lot of different things. And I'll let her kind of give the spiel on that. But there was something in particular that she talked about, which was these psychological elements that you can use to communicate to all of your audience. So, we all know that everyone is a little bit different. They learn differently, they hear differently, and there's ways in which you can communicate to appeal to all of them. So Andrea, that's my long-winded intro for you. I love the topic that we're about to dive into, but I just want to say thank you for coming on and welcome back to the podcast.
Oh my goodness, this is going to be amazing. I have a feeling we're going to go off on many tangents, and I'm here for it. And this is going to be so great. And when I learned what we're going to talk about today, it opened my mind to where I was not communicating, how I was unintentionally leaving out a huge percentage of my audience because I wasn't meeting what their brain needed to hear, how they needed to hear it, at what level they needed to hear it. So when I learned this, I was just like, this just blew my mind. So I was so honored to be able to share it with your students and now share it with your listeners.
Yeah. And I think it's so important because I think we just get up, like, we start these online businesses, we start creating content, and we just like people with, because, they don't question anything, right? So you just start teaching the way you were taught, or you just start like regurgitating information, and you start communicating basically the way you communicate everywhere in your life.
Yeah.
And we all know that like a lack of communication is one of the reasons why there's so many issues inside of relationships and just life, you know? And so people will follow a framework and like, why isn't it working? It's like, well, because you're the way in which you're communicating, it's not landing with the other person. It's not, they don't hear it. They don't understand it. It's not relevant to them. And it can be incredibly frustrating. And that's why we always tell our students, like, start with the problems, at least meet them where they're at, you know, like that's a very basic
Yeah.
thing. So I can't wait to dive in. Where do you want to start? Where do you think the best place to start is with all of this?
Well, I personally think starting at the very top is the easiest.
Okay.
And this is something that can be used in all the media to which you are communicating in. And what we're going to be talking about today is languaging and how to set up your emails, your
Mm,
text messages, your phone calls, your webinar trainings, your lives. And this is something that I started to adopt. And you'll notice that your engagement will continue longer, further, faster, which is what we all want to, especially as someone who loves Instagram and loves going live. The big obstacle we have is how to get people to come onto my live, listen to me all the way to the end so I can invite them to book a call with me or DM me or something.
right.
And so here's how you can strategically set up your communication, regardless of the media you're using, to address 100% of your audience's needs. And so there's four quadrants we're going to be going over today.
Are you doing it right now?
I am.
Because I'm like, okay, I'm hooked. Like tell me what this is. Just let's like get into it. And so I could feel that I know the audience is like, okay, I'm sold. Like
Yeah.
let's dig into it. So I was just curious, were you using some of the elements in the lead up in the intro?
I'm always using the elements. Now it's
Yeah.
become just
Yeah.
part of my language. So the answer will
Yeah.
always be yes. And here's what I just did if we're going to break it down. Is I entered into the first quadrant, which is the why.
Mm,
25%, 25%. So this is the largest quadrant, needs the why statement. This is the what's in it for me. Why am I giving you my time? Why do I care? Why do I want to show up? Why do I want to stay on? Why do I want to listen?
yeah.
25% of your audience needs this. And so when we skip that section, you've already lost a huge part of your audience because what we tend to do is go right into the what. I'll read emails now and it'll say, hey, Andrea, here's what I want to share with you. Here's what I'm
Uh,
offering. Here's what I need you to do. And I'm like, but I have no incentive
yeah. It
to.
would this also be like, hey Andrea, like we have this brand new workshop coming up in 2 days. Like that's the what? Another
That's the
example of
what.
okay.
And we jump right
Okay.
into that. And we have to remember that, again, a large part of our audience needs the why statement.
Mm,
Even when I'm putting a post on Instagram, my very first line on the caption will be, are you feeling this too? If you're struggling with weight, this is for you. You're leaving it in kind of a leading statement to be like, oh, I am struggling with weight. And then you
right.
got them to at least read your caption versus
Yeah.
just saying, new Santa's promo happening right
Right.
now or new whatever.
So
So go
with
ahead.
the why, I mean, I'm going to dive into the why, and, and
Mhm.
and if I'm interjecting too much, you just
No.
let me know. Just be like, Brandon, be quiet. But it sounds like when we talk about problems or unwanted situations or like painful experiences, that like the things that you can actually help people with is a great place to start with when we're trying to achieve the why. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. We want to expose what the problems are that you're going to be addressing in the
Yeah.
body of your live or webinar or email, even. Because
Cool.
this is so the first line to three lines are why statements. Let
Mm,
me know if this is you. Are you struggling with this specific problem? Are you stuck at this level of income? Brandon, you do it naturally already. And if
yeah.
after everybody listens to this, you can go back and listen, read, watch anything that Brandon's doing. He is doing this naturally. But this also goes into your programs. And if your students are getting through your modules or your phases or the way you want them to be coached or to be successful, perhaps you just jumped right into the what. or right into the
Mm,
how. And you didn't take that time, maybe a video or two, to say, this is why you're here. This is why you bought. This is why
mm.
you're showing up. You really do need to anchor in that what's in it for me as your audience, so that I'm like, got it. I'm now ready to give you my time, money, and energy.
Yeah, I think people forget that sometimes. Like even after someone buys, there's still more work that needs to be done
Mhm.
because now we want higher completion rates. We want people going through the program. We want people getting results, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of the times, and you also want people to feel good about the purchase. And
Yeah.
so what I find is when you sort of reaffirm the purchase, like you're going to get this, this, and this solved. Here's where you're at. Like rest assured, we got you. Like that sort of thing, like makes them
Mhm.
feel really good about the purchase, which is
Yeah.
something you need for
And
sure.
even with that last statement that you said, it could be misinterpreted as a what you're going to get, what we're going to do for you, what your
Mm,
results will be, versus why you're here,
right.
why you had this problem to begin with, why, you felt motivated. We always want to keep it about them. This is a
Yeah.
very all about me level. This is not about group. This isn't about the vehicle. This isn't about delivery. This is a very self-centered place for your
Yeah.
audience to give you anything back. And so
Right.
we always have to remember that this is about catching their audience, their unconscious mind with their problem specifically. And
Right.
here's the other layer to this, which we do so well inside the program, is if it's a generalized statement, it also won't be as powerful as a
Mhm.
specific statement. So a lot of times we'll see generic headers of, do you want to feel happier? Do you want to have more joy in your life? Well, I think most of the population is going to say yes. So that isn't a big enough why for me to really give you my time.
Right.
What are the evidence procedures, or what is the evidence that your client is doing that would show them they have more joy or more happiness? And that's all part of the specific why. So it's not just about capturing why you want them to continue with you. It's also about doing it at a very unconscious, very highly specific level, so that they, as the self centered person they are, and I'm saying that with love,
Yeah,
this is
all
in
that's
all
all of
of
us.
us,
Yeah.
this is in all of us, that I'm just like, damn, I want that. That is me. I'm in. I'm going to pay attention. Let's just see how this goes, type of
Yeah,
thing.
because it's more it becomes more relevant to the person. Like they feel
Yeah.
like you're talking to them. You're like, and that's when you start getting comments like, "Oh, you're speaking to my soul," or "How are you in my head?" or whatever. But like what you said, it actually speaks to the subconscious or unconscious mind, which is where we make most of our decision making from,
Yeah.
you know, and this is all really interesting because like I'm starting to realize even in our program with phase one and inside of NGM plus, like that's what we dial in on specific problems, situations.
Mhm.
What are you doing? And what I realize now, like I always just knew that worked because I see that works on me. Okay, this
Mhm.
is what they're doing. Da 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 da. I didn't understand. It's like, okay, there's a why. We're giving the why. I just knew like I always viewed it as relevancy. We want to be
Mhm.
hyper relevant to them, capture their attention. But there was an upsell script that we have in the program that every time I use it, it converts around 25%. And what I
Mhm.
realized with that script, the first 25% of that script is all the why. And
Yeah.
I didn't even realize it because it was all like, hey, congratulations, you now have X, you bought X, Y, and Z to help you with this problem, this problem, this problem. But we find most people still continue to deal with this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. And we have another option for like, and then it's like moves into the product. But there is no what in that at all. It's all like, this can be solved, this can be solved. You may still have
Mhm.
this, you may still have this, and it just works really well. And now I
And
know
it's
why.
about, yeah, and it's about stating it. So again, just to make it really clear, it's not what your problem is, what your problem is, what your problem is. It's why you still have this problem and what
Mm,
we can do to solve it. Why you're still stuck and what we can do to solve it. So
I
I
see.
misspoke. This is 35% of your audience, the
Okay.
why.
Okay.
35%, a huge chunk. And so if we can capture them there, you've got a
Yeah.
huge majority of your audience, especially for those that are new into business, that are in some sort of conflict. So let's put it into a new business owner where they're in conflict with, I have no idea how to start. I'm struggling with making money. they must have the why statement.
Mm,
If you are a relationship coach, they're naturally in conflict with communication. When you're in a conflict state, you
mhm.
must present that why statement. It has to be there. Those people
Okay.
need that if you want them to come in further into your world. So
Okay.
this is key, key, key.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense. So let's just recap the why. So we have the why, and some easy ways to do that is like really focus on those problems, the unwanted situations, the things that they're going through that they don't really want to go through anymore. But then also explaining it, communicating, and talking more specific and avoiding generalizations. Is there anything else that you would recommend?
That's it. So
Okay.
to summarize it, when you're writing the why statement, think of why should they care?
Okay.
What's
Yep.
in it for them?
Yep.
Why would they commit their time, money, or energy any further? And if you can go into that place, you'll write a perfect why statement. And as I
Okay.
said, I usually open with 1 to 3 max. It's not a
Okay.
huge piece, but it's an incredibly important piece.
Is it important in your opinion to like, because I always write from the place of like, what's going to make them feel heard,
Mhm.
validated, understood? Is that a good place to kind of write from as well?
Yeah, that is the why. That's
Okay.
why they want to read the rest of your email. That's
Yeah.
why they would even open your subject line. So this goes right to the point of should they even open your subject line. Now, again, this is 35%. So I don't want us to put all of the emphasis on this, but this is
Yeah.
the step-by-step approach that you must go with all of the things. And this
Right.
is what the presidents use, what we're talking about today. This is what the elite of people that lead movements, they teach in this way. And before we go any further, this is really based off of the format system, which you can Google format. And this is used in a lot of education. So a lot of
Mm,
teachers will learn the format system. We're
okay.
just significantly leveling it up.
Yeah. And bringing it to the context of marketing and
You
business.
got it.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Now for that like 65%
Mhm.
that it doesn't apply to, would an example be, because I'm trying to go through my head like, well, who wouldn't want the why? Because everyone wants to feel heard and validated. But would it be sort of like, let's just pretend, let's like use my product, for example. If someone's already at the point of like, I need a messaging system,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden they see an email, like they're aware I need a messaging system, and then they
Yeah.
see an email that says like brand new messaging system, like there's no
Yep.
why in that, but that would still get them to click because they're aware that they need it. Is that like the sort of person
S
that the why is not needed for?
Well, that's entering into quadrant number 2. So
Okay.
quadrant number 2 is 22% of your audience that just need the what.
Okay.
What do I need to know? What are the steps? What are the details? What are the facts? What are you talking
Right.
about? What's the definition? 22% of your audience just needs the what, the systems,
Hmm.
the steps, the details. So
Okay.
now we're entering into a new audience. Now, here's why this is important. You don't know where your audience is coming from. This is
Right.
kind of like putting a fishing pole out into the ocean and saying, I don't know what bait people need. And so this allows us to capture everybody with a net versus having to constantly change our lures.
Mm,
So now we're in a quadrant of people that care about the what the most. They
yeah.
still needed the why, but it wasn't as important as what are the details? What are the steps? What do I need to know? These people are very hardwired in the right and wrong, black or white. This is the right way, this is the wrong way. These people are also incredibly risk averse, so they don't want to make the wrong move.
Mm.
And I know as we're saying this, you're like, oh my God, that explains so many of my students. That explains where I came
100.
from. Like you instantly go
100%.
there. Everybody does. These are a lot of people when they are leaving their family dynamic of you go to school, you get a job, you retire, and that's how life goes. This is kind of
Okay.
that level of, we call it a value level. And when entrepreneurs are stepping out of the job value level, they have a really hard time getting into the entrepreneur space because they're afraid of doing it wrong. They're afraid
Mm,
of taking a bad risk. They're afraid of not having the right steps. They're not yet
Right.
developing the skills to think like a CEO yet. And if they choose to stay here, entrepreneurship typically is more of a struggle. So
Mm,
now we're talking about now shifting mindset levels, and value level 4, or the what quadrant, is all about structure, steps, right and wrong, black and white, cannot make a mistake, do things the same way it's been done.
right.
And
Okay.
it doesn't mean it's good or bad, but because I know we're talking to entrepreneurs right now, this might bring some clarity as to why when we say test and find out, they're like, but I don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't understand all the steps. I don't know how to move forward. And it creates a lot of fear and incongruency, and in some cases, a lot of paralysis. And that's because your neurology isn't yet built around the freedom that comes with entrepreneurship or thinking outside the box. And that's okay. Just understand this is probably why the what is so important, but
Okay.
the what isn't as important as our next quadrant, which is the how. And I
Okay.
want to make sure we're solid with quadrant 2 before we move
Yeah,
forward.
I'm taking a ton of notes here.
Yeah.
So so I was looking at this originally looking at this through the lens of like, okay, we're just going to go through the different quadrants when writing an email or a script or whatever.
Mhm.
But what I'm and thinking like, okay, we need all these different elements because people need all these different elements. But it also, what I realized here is I was kind of looking at it through the wrong lens because these are literally how specific people are wired.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm explaining this the right way. Like the way I was perceiving it was like everyone needs a little bit of these elements to fully get the
Mhm.
effect. But what I'm realizing is like there quite literally could be people that just don't need the why. There could be people that don't need quadrant three, don't need whatever, and it's just literally the way they're wired. So that leads
Yeah.
me to ask the question of can people move through these at different stages of their life? And I'm
Yes.
assuming the answer is yes, but I just want to make sure.
Yes, and let's hold off on that after we've
Okay.
gone through all of them, because
Okay.
then that'll make sense. Because when it comes to value levels, when it comes to your neurology, understand that your neurology is based around your environment. You cannot outgrow your environment without the right tools, strategies, or skill sets. So let me reframe what that means. If you are raised by family members that believe that entrepreneurship is risky, they are a
Hmm.
hardcore value level 4, right and
Right.
wrong, this is what you do. And everyone in your environment has that belief system. Unless you find a way to actively create a whole new community of entrepreneurs or engage in an entrepreneurial space where they can start installing entrepreneurial neurology, you cannot outgrow your environment.
Mm,
So, in another way, we describe value levels like a cup. So, there's a cup that you have that is your core framework. And
yeah.
the contents to which we can put into that cup could be entrepreneurial skills. But if the cup isn't malleable or if it's too rigid, then the
Hmm.
contents can easily just fall right out or get frozen instead of now allowing that cup to change. And
Yeah.
that's just a great analogy of how the neurology can shift as we up level from conflict, value level 3, why, what's in it for me, all about me, to
Hmm.
4, okay, now I just need to know the steps. What do I do? How do I be successful? What's right? What's wrong? I don't want to make a mistake. To this effortless feeling of entrepreneurial value level 5, which is how can I make this work for me?
Cool.
How can I make this work for my vision of my lifestyle? How can I make this work with my family dynamic? And you can easily progress through those, but you need to also add in skills, environmental shifts to hold the cup, to
Yeah.
hold the new contents.
Okay. Okay. A couple questions. So I didn't want to say mean, it sound mean, so I didn't say it, but it's like the first word you mentioned the word, but the first word that came to me when we were talking about the what and those types of people, it was rigid. It was like very
Yeah,
rigid and not
structured.
flexible, whatever. Um, one of the things that So one time I was over setting up this like helping set up a Kiva like a thing at Don Javier's house, and you could
Mm,
feel the energy was so intense that I was like
mhm,
almost like getting lightheaded. And he was Mandy was next to me, his wife was next to me, and they were on the phone because he was in the house, and he was like, tell Brandon, bend, don't break, bend, don't break, bend, don't break. And to me, that was like, you got to just like almost surrender, release,
mhm.
and just go with it and just like integrate with it,
Yeah.
versus just being so rigid and fighting that, because then you will break.
Yes.
And and that is one of the most frustrating things with working with students, is when it is very black and white. It is like, it's hard to snap them out of that sort of stuff. So my question to you is there a way to help people move out of that? Because it sounds like
Mhm.
if you are very like in the what phase, it sounds like it's going to be hard to be an entrepreneur. So
It can be, so long as you said, if you're gonna stay rigid and you're going to maintain the values and beliefs of a value level 4 platform, you cannot progress into value level 5. So
okay.
this is a choice. This is a
Yeah.
choice that I've seen our students start to make, and then you
Yeah.
see the up leveling start to happen.
Okay.
A
Yeah.
lot of this though, and I want to pre-frame all of this, we all have all these values in us. It's just,
Yeah.
where are we camping at any time in our life?
I see.
So there are times when I'm hardcore value level 3, what's in it for me? If I'm being sold, I'm like, don't
Yeah.
even go there, tell me why.
Yeah.
There are times when I am incredibly structured and routine, and that's my value level 4. We want all of these to be open.
Such a good
Where
point.
I camp is value level 5, which is high entrepreneur CEO. But
Yeah.
I also have a lot of the what if in me now, as I open up my spiritual self into
Hmm.
more of the, well, what if on a global scale? What if on a larger community scale? So I'm pre-framing it with that. Around the value levels though, a lot of the times it's completely out of our awareness. So
Mm.
there are core values that we can consciously say we love: freedom, wealth, flexibility, whatever. And then when you actually start working with them, or when I start working with my clients, I'm like, but you just finished saying taking money. I'm afraid to take money. You want
Mm.
wealth consciously, but you're afraid to take money from people,
Right. Yeah.
which now leads us to say, well, how is that a problem? How is that a problem? And I just did this with a client this week, and she was running a core belief of, if I become wealthy, my family, my tribe will abandon me.
Mm.
So here's where we're now running against unconscious beliefs and values that you won't
Yeah.
know until you start working with a coach who can help you be like, dang, did you know that you've been running this old program of wealth is greedy, or wealth is evil, or
Mhm.
people with money are taking from other people? You
Yeah.
can't make money that way, which means stepping up into wealth or holding wealth becomes very challenging. And we hear this with students all the time. I make money and then I find a really quick way to sell it, to
Yeah.
buy
To
things,
get
to
rid of
get
it.
rid of it, to get
Yeah.
it out of my bank account.
Yeah.
Millionaires that win the lottery can't hold the money because they don't have the neurology yet to do that. So there is some repatterning that needs to happen as well. The simplest way is to choose.
Yeah.
To choose, I'm not going to believe this anymore. I'm going to go 100% all into personal development, to listening to podcasts, to going to events, to saying my affirmations. I mean, the manifestation babe, Catherine Zankina, is a beautiful example of that.
I don't
When
know
she
her.
had her quantum leap year, she was just like, it, F that. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this. I
Yeah.
love swearing, but
Yeah. Go
F
ahead.
that, F the way you guys are all living. My life's going to be bigger, better, and more abundant.
Yeah.
And she had to immerse herself in that to
And
make it
it's
happen.
yeah, she did, and she's done a lot of work, and continues to do that, always just going deeper and deeper and deeper. And
Mhm.
it's funny because James and I will look at her and like, how did, like, this girl poops money? Like, I don't understand it. It's like she very little effort, huge results all the time and
Yeah.
everything. And we're just like, what? Like, and we do
But I
fine for ourselves, you know? We're like this.
I would challenge though, you and James are doing incredibly well, and James said the same thing. When I started getting into flow and
Yeah.
up leveling, and same with you, when I started getting into flow and up leveling and meditating and sitting in the silence,
Hmm.
that's what we're talking about. And value level 4 doesn't do that.
I
Value
see.
level 5, value level 6
Yeah.
does.
But it is a choice. Like,
It's a choice.
because, I have these conversations with my wife sometimes about like, as parenthood, and just like how I show up as a dad and different things like
Mhm.
that. And who I am today is not even close to who I was as a parent when my son was
Yeah.
born. It was only just one. Now we have three, and
Yeah.
I'm at such a different space and level. But it was a choice that I made of like, I want to make these shifts. And it's really hard. But I want to go back to something that you said, which
Mhm.
is, you can, in different areas of your life, you can be more of a different level, which for me was a big, huge awareness shift, because as an entrepreneur, I was not at level 4. I was not in the what as an entrepreneur. I was very just kind of like, would go with the flow. I could take risks. And
Mhm.
my dad started businesses and stuff like that. So, and he kind of pushed me into like learning a lot of that stuff. So like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. However, when my son was born and I was a parent, I was very much a level 4, very black and white. This is the way it has to be done. This is like how
Yeah.
I was. I turned out just fine, which like I didn't, like no one I don't think does. but but
We
you're
all do the best we can with the resources we have at the
100%,
time. That's what I just always say to myself.
100%.
I'm like, "Dang."
Right, but
M
I feel like the second you operate from "I'm good" or "I'm fine," there's no room for growth. There's no room for change. So as soon as
Yes.
you operate with the belief of "I'm good, I'm fine, I don't have the problem," all change is gone. It's done. There's no way for it to continue. But I didn't have the awareness or the self-awareness in the parenting realm in the beginning to even
Right.
know that that was rigid, because I was so in like, oh, I could take risks and I could go with the flow and I could do
Mhm.
this. But then in that area, I was so blind to it until one day, like I remember I snapped at my son and I was like, whoa, like what
Yeah.
happened? And then I hear from Don Javier all the time. He tells me, he's like, you cannot control your kids. You cannot tell them who to be. You
Yeah.
cannot indoctrinate them into things. You got to let them go ahead.
Right, but that reinforces what we were saying is nothing can change until it becomes in your awareness.
Right.
You can't make a choice if you
Right.
don't know what you're choosing.
Right.
So you had to go through the conscious awareness to be like, "Oh, this isn't congruent. This doesn't
Yeah.
work for me. I'm
Right.
choosing to do a different way." And that comes with resources and tools
Of
and new
course.
skills and
Yeah.
all of that. You
Yeah.
you literally cannot change without awareness.
Right.
That is the first step of coming out of problem. Once you have the awareness, and if you choose to stay back in pain or problem, that's also a choice.
Right.
But here's a beautiful example of where I see this come up with students a lot is when they receive feedback or coaching.
Mm,
At the unconscious level, when somebody gives you feedback or coaching, and then you immediately jump and you want to debunk it or say, well,
defend.
but, blah, 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 you've completely deleted your unconscious mind, forgot everything that that coach just said to you.
Yeah.
Instead of taking a pause, saying thank you, when you say thank you, your unconscious mind absorbs it. You don't have to
Mhm.
engage with it, but it at least took it in. And then you can say, and here's a follow up question that I have.
Right.
And even in that shift in languaging, when you're being coached by someone, immediately stops you from being rigid and fine and okay and stuck to being like,
Right.
oh, I'm open to hearing a different way. And that starts to loosen up the grip of this
Yeah.
value level for my way or no way, right or wrong, my
S
belief or not my belief.
so I wanna present something to you and get your thoughts on it, because that is a big issue, like, in the coaching world or just mentorship, or just it doesn't even have in any sort of environment, I think, is when you give someone feedback, whether it's solicited or unsolicited. Let's just go with the coaching, because that's all like you're signing up
Yeah.
for that. So it's welcomed usually, hopefully. And then someone's like fighting it, right?
Yeah.
Um, like my interpretation of that, and you just let me know if I'm off or in the
Mhm.
right direction with it. My interpretation is when they fight, it's because it's either like the ego is too strong in that, or the wound that caused that is too painful to address. So they can't like get there, but they will eventually in time, as they start to maybe heal that or grow or whatever. Is that kind of an accurate direction, like statement to make?
I would say yes, that is what's happening in the moment. But if you are listening to this and you take nothing from this other than when someone gives you feedback or advice, you just stop and say thank you,
Hmm.
that is still a choice. You can still have an ego temper
Mm,
tantrum all day,
right.
but at least allow your unconscious mind to absorb the information, especially
Yeah.
when you're paying for it. So this
Yeah.
becomes an adulting conversation of yes, your ego, your inner child. You may see a mirror that you weren't planning on seeing. And
Hmm.
you can still choose to say, hey, Brandon, I'm really struggling with this. You give me feedback. I may not be open to it in the moment, but I can at least say, thank you, heard.
Yeah. Well, I think,
Can I ask another question? Right? Like
and that's
all
just
adults are capable of that.
right. And I think that's a really good thing because that's also, in my opinion, the beginning stages of like being able to critically think.
Hmm.
So, you also have like, I just want to be very clear with the listeners. We're not saying to blindly follow any advice. Otherwise, that means you're not like, being stuck or in your own way. We're
Yeah.
saying is like, no, absorb and then see how it fits, see how it
Yeah.
feels. Like you still have to be able to, like, and this is one of the biggest lessons I learned was like, because Jim Thornton was a big mentor for me, but and I would just kind of like, oh, he said this, and I'm just trusting it. And then like, I'm like,
Yeah.
that doesn't feel right or whatever. And I eventually got to a point where I'm like, you know what? No, I can take the information, I can take other
Mhm.
people's lessons, but I have to see if it applies to me. I have to critically think about this.
Yeah.
And I started to realize like, wow, like 50% of the advice or more that I got from mentors, it wasn't actually right for me.
Yeah.
And I had to make my own decisions on that. But what we're saying, I just want to be very clear, is being open to absorbing that advice and then critically think about, does this fit me, my values, my karma? Does
Yeah.
it fit how I want my life to look? Does it fit all of those things? And then you make your own internal decisions off of that. Is
And that's
would
a
you agree?
skill set at any level.
Yeah.
This isn't value level 4
Right.
or entrepreneur level or value level 3 or value level 6, which is more of the global community vibe.
Right.
This is human communication.
Right.
And this is
Yep.
not a skill that's being taught. So this is hard.
It
And
is hard.
it takes a little bit of time, especially in a coaching atmosphere, for you to pre-frame. When I give you feedback, your first response is going to be thank you, so
Hmm.
that I know you've heard it. And then if you have a question afterwards, you can ask, can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, that's good.
Right?
Awesome.
And so this is a skill that you can start to teach your children. I mean, everything I do in NLP here, I translate immediately over to my marriage
Mm.
and my kids. It's
Like
not perfect,
you change your
but
communication with them based off of it, or you teach them the concepts, or both?
I personally just do it by example
Mm.
linguistically for me. So
Yeah.
I want to make sure I will typically start a conversation with my husband of, this is why I want to have a conversation with you. This is what I'd really like to cover. Let me know how we can do it, and then we can have a dialogue.
I
Very
see.
simple.
Yeah.
So I do that with my kids as well. Why is it that you want to know this? Well, what have you
Mm.
done already? How have you executed on this on your own? Sure, I can engage. It's
Right.
why, what, how, and then questions.
Okay, I'm having so many dot connection moments because I I'm doing this without like
Hmm.
knowing that this is what I'm doing. So
Right.
like just to give you an example, yesterday morning, I like my wife and I will switch off days on taking the kids to school,
Hmm.
like getting ready, doing the breakfast. One of us can sleep in, the other one, so we just switch off. So it was my day. I think this was yesterday. It was like my day yesterday, and I was running late. So the kids, like, I'm worried that they're gonna be late for school and yada yada yada. So
Hmm.
number one was was self-aware that, okay, you're being rigid in this moment. Who the hell cares if they're 5 minutes late? You just give them a pass, they go to school. Like, so the stress was off.
Yeah.
But I also, like, normally when we talk to our kids, most people are probably like, go clean your room, go do this, go get your backpack, go brush your teeth, go
Hmm.
whatever. And I knew with my son that what I needed him to do, that was not going to work. And what I
Yeah.
needed him to do was to help get our 4-year-old ready so I could go get changed. So like get her backpack, get her lunch, help get her shoes on. And I remember telling him, like, if I say, go help Maddie get ready, he's going to like fight, or there's gonna be resistance. So instead, what I
Hmm.
said, I did the why. I said, well, I'm running late. I'm really busy. I'm worried that we're going to be late and I really need some help right now. So I just
Yeah.
kind of gave the why of like, here's, I'm about to give you an ask, but here's the reason why. And then I just said, it would like, if you can you help me do X, Y, and Z? So I kind of went
Mhm.
through, like, started with the
Yeah.
why, and then instantly his response was, yeah, I can do that. And he went and did it.
Totally. All children are value level 3. All
Okay.
children, all teenagers are what's in it for me? Why
Yeah.
do I care?
Right.
That's them.
Yeah. And the why in that moment was like helping out dad. So
Yeah.
I feel like kids are like, they want to help you out, you know? They just don't, like, if you just give them a direct thing, they see it as like, oh, you're trying to control me and tell me what to do
Mhm.
versus I'm doing it to help my mom out or I'm doing it to help my dad out. But when you give that context, it changes the dynamic.
Absolutely. And again, all of us have inner children within us as well. So now
Yeah.
coming full circle back to our audience, a lot of us are in conflict. A lot of us are in pain. A lot of us are
Right.
in problem. We can't think right or wrong at that level. We need to know, why are you the person who's going to solve my problem?
Yeah.
Why should I show up for your master class, your live?
Yeah.
Then you teach the what to do. And
Okay.
remember, as you said at the very beginning of the podcast, we enter into our communication with what we're dominant in.
Mm,
So whether we want to or not, I would often enter into the, well, how are you going to solve this? How are you going to do it? Just tell me how you're going to do it. It sounds fine.
yeah.
But to my employees, even, they're like, well, why am I in charge of this? Why do I need to do this? And then what are the steps you want me to do? And then I'll tell you how I did it. But because
Right.
I'm value level 5, I'm just like, well, why can't you just figure it out? Like, just do it. I don't care how you do it, just get it done. And they're like, but
Right.
I don't understand why. I don't know what
Yeah.
the steps are. Right.
Makes
So it
sense.
goes everywhere.
Okay. All right. So let's recap. We went through value level 3, which is why, value level 4, which is the what, and then
Yep.
we started to talk about value level 5, which is the how.
How.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
So
and
yep.
35% of your audience is the why. They
Yep.
need to know what's in it for them. 22% of your audience is the what to
Yep.
do, the what are the steps. Now we're at 18% of your audience, which is the how. And the
Okay.
how is all about, how does this work? How do I do this? They're
Mm,
the ones that need to be given a demo. They need to be given an exercise. They need to do it hands on. Very
okay.
much like your story that you share about Will and the bow and arrow.
Yeah.
He was very much in the, well, how can I make a bow and arrow from scratch? And he just did it with his hands. He didn't read it in a book. He didn't
Right.
want to know what the steps were. He's like, okay, I have the general concept. I need to get my hands on it. So
Yeah.
18% of your audience must fill out a worksheet while they're paying attention to you. They need to have a demo. They need to have a legitimate exercise to do. They need to put it into practice, into action. Otherwise,
Mhm.
you'll lose them.
Yep.
It's something
100%.
to have steps, but if I can't get my hands on it, if I can't get a grasp around it, if I'm not physically writing on something, I'm not getting the full picture of what you want me to do. So, this is
Yeah.
a beautiful example of, inside your programs, you also don't know what education or value level your students are. So, give them a downloadable workbook, send them a workbook in the mail, give them
Yeah.
lots of tasks with every module. This is what you're going to do. Go do that exercise, come back and let me know. Even when you do lives or emails, I want you to click this link and watch this video. That's a task.
Right.
Or I want you to practice this with 10 posts and DM me your results, like you do on your webinars.
Yeah.
18% of your audience needs that.
Okay. Yeah, it's very interesting because, again, it's another element that I was doing without really
Mhm.
realizing,
Yeah.
like, being intentional with it. So that's
Yeah.
great. Okay, cool. And you know, there it also reminds me of this thing that Mel had taught me a long time ago, which is like, if your audience doesn't believe that they can do it, then they will never buy from you. And part of
Sure.
that is they have to be able to see, what does that road sort of look like? Is this sort of the same sort of thing? They need to know, like, how it's going to happen, what it looks like, and then also be like, oh, I can do that. And then that needs to happen in order for a sale to happen. Is that correct?
It is. And just to really anchor in what you just said, it must be in this order.
Okay.
So that is not to say that they don't need it, but if you start with just the how to do it and you don't
Yeah.
open with the why or what the steps are, they have no
Mhm.
cup on what to do. And then you always must finish with the fourth quadrant, which is the
I
what
hold on.
if.
I'm so happy because I see all our philosophy follows this, and I wasn't even aware that we're doing.
Yeah, it's very
I could just
congruent.
see what was happening, and I'm like, okay, this is what gets results,
Mhm.
and I could see, but I didn't label it as like what, why, how,
Mhm.
whatever. But this is my biggest sort of issue with how-to content is because people just get in there and then just like you're starting with the how, and I'm like, guys, is for 95% of people out there, it does not work. And then I even have people that are like doing really well with how-to content and they want to fight me on it. And it's like, yeah, but you're like the 5%, maybe
Well, now you can
1%.
specifically throw out a number, whatever 100 minus 18 is. That's how many percentage of people aren't
Yeah.
following.
So you're applying. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, it's working for you. And you're speaking to 18% of the people that you could
Yeah,
like of the 100%. So,
right.
you know, but
And it
even when
must be
we, as I say, even when we teach the how-to content, the framework, like the persuasive tutorial, actually brings people from the what, the why, the how. Like, so you have that's what persuasive tutorial does is it starts at why, what, and then
yeah.
eventually gets to the how. And so this
And
is
it
really cool to see
must
like
be
the
in this
science behind it.
order. It must be in this order every single time.
Right,
Why, what, how to do it, what the exercise is, demo.
right.
Then what are your questions?
Mm,
So the final quadrant is the what if. This is
okay.
25% of your audience. So this is another large chunk. And these are the people that will say, well, what if this happens? Well, what if I do
Mm,
that? What if, and you're just like, just please, I gave you the steps. Just do it.
yeah,
Then come back with your questions. This is a huge philosophy inside our program, in your
right.
program, where it's like, just go and do the thing, come
Yep.
back with the results, and then we can debrief your questions all day. This is exactly
Cool.
how a webinar training needs to go. Why are you here? What is it that I can teach you? Here's two big takeaways that you can do now to be successful. What questions do you have? What results do you have? What do we need to talk about? 25% of your audience will be in the what if category, and
Mm,
they will not be able to hold anything you teach them until you rigidly, whatever that word is,
it's a word.
structuredly make them go through all the steps.
Okay.
Because the what if people are going to say, well, you told me why I need to be here, but what if this happens? You're like, follow along with me. I'm going to go
Yeah.
into the what, then I'm going to give you an exercise, and then I'll answer your questions. You
Okay.
have to hold those people. So this is a value level 6 platform.
Okay.
Value level 6, in a really funny, non-judgmental way, are the CEOs that throw away their entire company, sell all their assets, go live in a yurt wearing Birkenstocks and a cloth robe for the rest of their life. This is the
Yeah.
value level 6, where it's all about global community. Money is bad at value level
Mm,
6. However, it's higher consciousness thinking.
right.
So, this is why an entrepreneur, if they want to have a global mission, still needs a cup of value level 5 how thinking. They certainly need the what structure, and they need to continuously remember why they're doing it. Otherwise, they will float away and they will not
Yeah.
be successful. And there's a ton of high value level 6 thinkers that are in it for the healing, that are in it for
Mm,
the love and the care and the humanity, but they
yeah.
haven't built the entrepreneurial cup of structure and actually doing the doings, because they're all up
Yeah.
in what if land. So if those are the students that you're attracting, or the audience that you're attracting, you must hold them to the why, what, how first, and then
Mhm.
say, and then I'll get to your questions. Just do it. I promise you'll be okay. And once they do all those steps, a lot of the questions are gone. A lot of the what ifs are gone, because they're like, oh, that was way easier than I thought. Or,
Okay.
oh, I didn't realize that it could be this great. The what if audience also loves community. They feed off of being able to share their knowledge with other people.
Mm,
So if your community is very much into the healing spiritual vibe, having a Facebook group or a community sharing platform is going to be essential.
Okay.
because they're going to want to share and they're going to want to ask questions and they're going to want to give back to each other. That's like that value level. That's what
Okay.
their driver is.
So I get and understand who is at that level.
Mhm.
But can you bring some clarity on how to speak to that level, like from a marketing, email, ad, or content sort of
Yeah.
perspective?
So here's a beautiful example. Let's say I do a live on Instagram and I
Hmm.
say my why statement. We go through what we're talking about. I say, now I want you to download this workbook, complete it, email it back to me, and then we can book a call.
Hmm.
That's how you talk to the what if people. It's just
Okay.
literally do the doing and then we'll chat. Do the exercise and DM me, and then you've unlocked a call with me, or
Got
we
it.
can voice note back and forth. Or it could even be as simple as, I want you now to, how can you get this? Join my Facebook group. And now in the Facebook group, we can dive deeper into X, Y, or Z.
So it's kind of sounds like when you move through those three things, the why, the what, and the how, it almost removes the what if sort of mentality or
Naturally, it
questioning that you're going to
does.
get. Okay. That
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
You just have to hold to the structure. So
Okay.
let's say you're doing an all day training or a live event like you've done.
Yeah.
Every segment now must go through all of this. So we're going to start with, let's say it's an hour-long segment on thought reversals.
Hmm.
Why do thought reversals matter? Why is this so important for your business? What it all is? What are the steps? Now I want all of you to create a thought reversal with me, and then I'll answer
I see.
questions.
Okay.
Not until everyone has done the exercise together.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like that sort of format, it gives the structure that they're missing is kind of what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay, cool. All right. So we have the why, the what's, the how, and the what if. So
Mhm.
value levels 3 through 6.
Yep.
My next question for you is where, like, since we're all most of the listeners are course creators and things like that, is this the sort of framework that we want to follow in every piece of the funnel? Like, should it be in
Yes.
every ad? Should it be in the webinar? Should it be everywhere? Like, what's the structure of
Yes.
using it sort of look like?
Everywhere.
Okay.
We say format everywhere forever.
Okay.
It is how it's done. So in a Facebook ad, why is the opening statement? What you're going to learn,
Hmm.
how to do it, access my link. When they
Yeah.
come onto the webinar, you answer their questions.
Gosh. So this is just like what our frameworks we have in the program. Like one of them in particular, like the
Yeah.
list method one.
Yeah.
Again, not intentionally following these, but I just knew that that format works, which is
Yeah.
it's like if you are this experiencing this problem, then you are
Yeah.
likely doing this thing, which is building that in my opinion is relevancy, but it's building the sort of like why it's the specific
Hmm.
problems, the specific mistakes causing it. And then what I always say is we had X amount of students who've had that problem, and the ones that were able to fix it had these three things in common. So now I realize that's the what. And then I'd always say, and so what I want to do is share what these three things are that they all discovered and all led to the results. And we're going to do it on like a 3-day workshop or something like that. And that is the how. So that's
Yeah.
one of our um, that's one of our highest performing ad frameworks
Yeah.
is that sort of process there.
The
And I didn't even
errors
realize you
that
were
I
following.
see, so the majority of the population is doing a good job of this inherently, but the errors that I see is they always forget the why. The
Mm,
why statement is not big enough. And they cycle through this in the wrong order. So they may start with a why statement, then it's how can I get you there? Well, this is what we're going to do. This is how you can access my training, and
mm,
then I'll answer your questions. So now it's a scramble.
yeah.
It's where we just like when we did the NGM live event just last month, how you said you really need to use discernment of when and what you share, and when you share what you share. So
Yeah.
this is now asking all of our audience to really be mindful of, am I doing the how first and then why and then a bit of what and then more how? That's a
Yeah.
format scramble. That doesn't work. So it must be this way, and you can loop it a bunch of times, but it still
Yeah.
must be in this order. So why are you here? What are some things? Quick how? Any questions? Good. Why are we doing this now? What are those steps? How are we going to do this? Any questions?
Yeah.
The unconscious mind feeds off of this cycle in this order. And when
Mm.
people scramble it, it doesn't work, even though the elements are there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cause like even in a webinar, that's how we started is like with the why. And then I tell them to go into the what, and then we go in a little bit of the how. But then even when you get into the teaching again, we restart that process again for every step. So every step is like, here, I teach the students go into the why, which is like go into the problems they're having. Here's the outcome that's going to get like, even with, so it's almost like the inception where it's like you do it for the frame of the webinar, but then you do it again for each step throughout the webinar. So you're like doing it
Yeah.
again within. So that makes a lot of sense.
And yet people aren't doing it that way. It's
Yeah.
really easy to scramble it and not do it intentionally. So this
Right.
is a skill, right?
Yeah.
This is truly a skill. But when it comes to teaching, so when I teach NLP students, every segment will always go here. And if students ask questions, I say, no, 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 we're not there yet.
Right.
I'm still doing the what, the background information, the jargon, the what the steps are. Then I do a demo. Even if there's questions at the demo, I will not answer your questions. I'm doing the demo.
Yeah.
Now do a breakout room. And then what did you learn? What do I need to know? So it's also about holding true to the structure because people at different stages are going to want to interject and then you
Right.
could scramble unintentionally.
Gotcha. And that's what you mentioned earlier. Is I told the students, I'm like, you guys have to be so disciplined
Yeah.
and knowing what to talk about and when to talk about it. But this framework, this process makes it so easy to be disciplined because that was the biggest thing. Like, well, I want to talk about this and I want to talk about this. I'm like, yeah, but you're so in the how and you're deep
Mhm.
in the how that it's like,
Right.
they're not ready for that, man. Like, just be so
Yeah.
disciplined to be like, I will have my time, I will have my opportunity, but that is not now. and so,
Yes.
and so just be disciplined in knowing what to talk about and when. And then even like, what I find is when you find out that flow of that sort of communication within your brand, you can just repeat it a lot
Yeah.
over and over and over again. And people feel like, oh, I'm repeating, I'm not coming to anything new. I'm like, no, but it still works. Like I feel like I repeat myself 60, 70% of the time inside of my brand all the time. And it just works. So makes a lot of
And
sense.
and as a course creator, you are teaching.
Yeah. You're a
You are
teacher.
teaching 100% of your audience.
Yep.
Every module needs to follow this structure.
Well, that's what I tell people is
Mhm.
like one of the best things I did for generating more demand and bigger is becoming a better teacher. That's all it was,
Mhm.
is figuring out how to actually teach in a way that people just get and understand without requiring think, without any path of resistance. It's like, what's the path of least resistance as a teacher? And that's how I became a better
And not
launcher and
it's
pusher.
not even you became a better teacher, you became a better communicator. And
Yeah,
that's really what
exactly.
we base this all off of is this is human communication.
Right.
Now, when I did this live with your students, we had that question that I love getting, which is,
Mhm.
well, it sounds like it's manipulative. It sounds like
Mm,
this is, now we're talking at the unconscious level to people and we are persuading them. And what I always say is whether or not you use this tool, this is how your brain communicates. If you have a brain, if you have a neurology, and you're a human
mhm.
alive on this planet right now, this is how it is. And the visual I always like to say is you can use a pen for good and write beautiful things. You can use a pen as a shiv if you
Right.
need to, as a protection mechanism. The holder of the pen gets to choose how they want to use the tool in their hand. And so I present this as a neutral tool. And what have you got to lose? It makes you a better communicator instantaneously.
Yeah.
And this is being used in education systems everywhere. This was created in 1980. So this
Yeah.
is also isn't a new concept. Um,
Well,
and
people are
it is such a
using people have been using this for a while. I mean, it comes down to science. It's like the brain
yeah,
receives and processes information in a very specific way. That's just
yeah,
the facts. Like there's no arguing or open for debate. Like that's just how the mind works. And we know that. So if you have something that can help people and you can change the way you present the information to flow with how the brain's going to process the information, why wouldn't you do it? Because it's going to allow them to take the information that they need and be able to implement it more. And it's also going to make you bring more people in the ecosystem to help them more. And
yeah.
so, like Andrea said, it's like a tool by itself is not bad, especially in this. It's who uses it and how they use it, which
Mhm.
quote unquote makes it good or bad or whatever it
Mhm.
may be. So
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you as well. Andrea, this was awesome. I really enjoyed this conversation. Where can people learn more about you if they wanted to dive deeper into this or work with you and all that good stuff?
Yeah. So the website where I host my NLP coaching and my programs that I offer is andreamaxim.com, or you can find me on Instagram at the Andrea Maxim. And I train in NLP and hypnosis, and I also do personal business breakthroughs with clients to reevaluate values, see what limiting beliefs are still existing, blow them out so that you can fully step into that value level 5, value level 6, and open all of those platforms so you can access any of those resources anytime. And
Yeah.
I just I fell in love with it. I've turned to goo multiple times doing it, and it's the best. It is the best.
I love it. I love it. So everyone head over there, check out Andrea. And Andrea, again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you sharing your time with us, but more importantly, your wisdom with us. So thank you.
Anytime.
Cool. All right, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, let us know. Tag Andrea, tag myself, share it on Instagram. And if you haven't left us a review yet, head over to iTunes, leave us a review. I love reading every single review. So I would love to hear your thoughts on the podcast. And we will see you guys next week for another episode. Take care, everyone.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.